They were really close cousins, Uncle Elias stood. I know the one person who can help you with more information. He must be 100 years old, but his memory is phenomenal. They didn't walk far away. The old man, his name is Kopi, lived a few huts away from Uncle Elias' compound. They found him sitting on a log outside his hut, chatting to passers-by. Kopi was something of a legend in Keti. Families became the religious priests and seers. They knew every village pathway and even climbed the hills alone and without a stick. He said the wind spoke to him, and the trees on the hills, and that the very earth on which he walked guided his path. It was said that once a missionary came to him and tried to convert him to Christianity. I heard that your Christian God is famous for making blind people see again. Will he return by sight if I become a Christian? He will forgive your sins, and that is better than regaining your sight. But I never sin against him. Why should I seek his forgiveness? We are all sinners, the missionary went on, but Kopi has stopped listening. Keep your religion, I will keep mine, said he, when the missionary had stopped speaking. Now he cocked his head and stared with his opaque eyes in Mama's direction, and said, Lamakson, are you the soldier or the one who writes history? I am the one who writes history, Mama replied. We need to know about the Waziri, Ilya said. Well, how comes a historian doesn't know about the past? Ha ha ha. He cackled and hit the ground with his stick. His cackle grew into a chesty cough, which ended with the spelling of a street of Phelim. Then he went on, Waziri Lakala. I am sure you didn't know his name. Did you? Did you? He rubbed his shrunken calves with tiny bony hand as he waited for Mama's answer. His head cocked. His mouth was open, exposing his toothless gum. They were dirty pink beneath the black carving in his lips. Lakala, indeed, that is his name, Ilya said. Tell us about him. The old man was silent for a long while, as if cranking his old brain into action, and then he began long lectures on Kati family and lineage, and finally concluded with, most people don't know that the Waziri Lakala's father and my Laikai's father would have the same grandmother. They forgot about poor Laikai as soon as Boldong became my. No one speak of him anymore. He died in Yoruba land alone and lonely. But he was a good man. He was only doing what was right. When you said he died alone, do you mean he was sent into exile alone, without his wife and children? Yes, he had 2 wives and 2 daughters, but the wives remarried after he had gone, and their children became adopted children, bearing new names. No one remember who they are now. As they returned to go after thanking him, he called after them, come back next time and I will tell you how Lakala's eyes got the way it is now. He wasn't born that way. You know, he loves other people's wives, and one day an angry husband surprised him in his own bed. Ha ha ha. Well, I didn't know Waziri was also related to Lakai, Ilya said. If Lakai remarried while in exile, then the boy prince might actually be who he claims to be, and that makes the Waziri his great uncle. All this doesn't make any sense, Uncle Ilya said. They were back in this living room, and he was leaning back in his chair, looking exhausted from all the brainstorming. First, the Mai hired me to be his biographer, and Mama began, but this his uncle interrupted him. Was it actually the Mai who hired you? I should think the Waziri was more instrumental in that. You are right, but how on earth is the Waziri going to benefit from that? Is he hoping that the book will reveal something about the Mai that will force him to abdicate, and then Prince will step in? So you are assuming that he invited Prince to Ketty, but Prince will make an unlikely contender for the throne. There is something more. I am sure, and I think the biography has something to do with it. Did he try to influence you in any way in the writing? He did offer to be interviewed a couple of times, but I still can't see how the biography is tied to all this. Well, let's forget the book for a moment. Let us look at the fact. The only way Prince or anyone else can become mine is if the Mai is removed or dies. I am not sure if you knew that this Mai has no male child. He has no direct heir. When he dies, there is going to be a big fight for the throne. All the cousins and nephew will come out. But the Mai is not dying soon. So is he? He is not ill unless Mamo looked at his uncle. Unless the Waziri knows for certain that the Mai is dying soon. But how? Ilya shook his head. One can tell, but then, to people like the Waziri, such things are not as horrifying as they are to you and me. It is just a means to an end. All I can tell you is be careful. He is a very evil man, and if he suspects you of trying to thwart his plan in any way, he won't hesitate to remove you. I suggest you resign. Tell them you don't want to write the book anymore. Or better, just go away somewhere quietly, you Uncle Ilya said. Mama was shaking his head. I don't think running away is the answer. Besides, we don't know if we are right or we are just speculating. Just be careful, Uncle Ilya said, looking very agitated. Promise to let me know before taking any step. And whatever you do, don't confront man. Mama promised and went back home. Zara took him by surprise. When he got home, Auntie Marina handed him a handwritten note. I was just going out. Your lady friend left this. You did not look at the note. He was sure it was from Julie. Till much later, after he had taken his shower and was about to go out, that was when he glanced fully at the note on the table, where he had dropped it, and for the first time noticed the unmistakable capital letter E. It was Zara's handwriting. She always wrote E's in capitals, even in the middle of a word. He read the two lines. Hi, Mama. I came to say hi, but you weren't home. Look me up at the dispensary later if you have time. From midday, Zara. Rush out to the neighbors, looking for his aunties to verify if it was Zara who had just left the note. It couldn't be, because Zara was in South Africa, married to Temba, the South African. He didn't meet his auntie, but it was also none anyway. So he decided to drive to the dispensary right away. On the way, he wondered why he wanted to meet at the dispensary. He hoped she was not ill. He drove fast over the narrow, dusty road, something breaking suddenly to avoid children's play. The dispensary was not far from the church compound. It had started life as a little clinic run by a Scottish doctor, but later the local government had taken it over. Now it was run by Dr. Injango and an old retired nurse. It opened daily minus Sunday from 9 a.m. to midday. It was mostly empty except in the rainy season when the mosquito breeds and malaria fever become rampant. Emergencies such as snake bite and problematic childbirth were very rare, and when they did happen, the doctor routinely referred them to the general hospital. Dr. Ijango, now in his 70s, usually sat dozing in the veranda, the radio beside him broadcasting the news in Hausa. Today looks like a typical day at the dispensary. There were only two women with their two kids waiting out on the veranda. They were seated on a bench, gossiping. They stopped where Mamo parked his car and approached them. "Good day, twin. Are you ill?" one of the women, a close friend of Auntie Maria, asked. "No, I came to see a friend, but she doesn't seem to be here," he said, unable to hide his disappointment. But just then the flimsy curtain cover the clinic door parted and Zara appeared. She stood with the curtain bunch in one hand, and the other hand held a file from which he read out a name. Lantana, you are next." She hadn't seen him. She turned to go back inside. "Zara," he said, coming up the veranda steps, smiling. She was wearing a sort of nurse uniform, only it wasn't white. It was blue, with white stripes. She looked different, slimmer, thinner. Face looked tired, and there were lines around the forehead. "Mama," she said, a smile break through her wearings. "I am almost through. These two are the last. You can come in and wait. You don't have to go now, do you?" He opened his mouth to ask a question. Then he decided to save it for later. He went on. The dispensary was made of a single room. He remembered it was very well. As a kid, he had been a regular visitor here. The same heavy mahogany table which used syringe and ampoules lying carelessly on it, and against the wall was a roll of neatly labeled tin full of tablets. The label carried the usual names: chlorine, Panadol, aspirin, Priton. He sat down on a bench and watched Zara attend to the patient. It was a child of not more than 5. Mother held her in her lap as she answered Zara's question. Zara read from the card and the woman held her and asked the woman a few questions. Then she spooned out tablets from one of the tin and put it in a transparent sachet and handed it to the woman. "Give her 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 2 before going to bed. She should be okay in about a day or 2. It's nothing serious." When the woman and her daughter went out, Mamo asked Zara, "Where is Dr. Njengo? Is he not feeling well?" "Today, he left early. I didn't know. You were also a nurse." "I trained in Duban for 3 months. I needed to because of my work with the children. I know enough to read prescription and to change bandage and wash wound and give injection. Nothing too challenging." He watched her clean up the next patient, a girl of about 9 covered in a fur-feverish skirt and struggling wildly. He helped the mother hold the kid as Zara injected her. The room was hot, and by the time they were through, they were all sweating. "That was the last," she said. "I will wash my hand and then we can go. I have a car. I can give you a lift home." He then said as he waited for her to lock up. "God, save us from having to work. I am really tired. How long have you been in town? When did you begin to work here?" he asked as they drove over the bumpy road to the house. "1 week," she said. "You have been in town 1 week," Mama said, taking his eyes off the road to look at her. Careful, yes. 1 week. I heard the doctor needed a nurse, and the other one is ill. She is my auntie and got me to the volunteer till she can return." Her voice was weary, hoarse, as if she were just recovering from a fever, as if she hadn't been using the voice for a long time. As they passed the community school, she said, "I see the school is still closed. Yeah, I remember the commissioner that came that day to close down the school. Yeah, the one who wanted to be addressed properly. He died. He was shot by the soldiers when they took over power. They went to arrest him and he resisted." Zara's house was as he remembered. the big gate, the one-eyed gatekeeper, yam goopy as ever, but wearing a thick beard now as if to register the passage of time, maybe just to cover his missing car. The living room with its big window and the picture on the wall, but he noticed that the wedding picture was not there anymore. Zara left him in the living room and went to the bathroom to clean up. It was hot in the room, despite the open windows and the overhead fan. The fan only circulated the same hot, stale air. He went outside and sat on the step. The sky was grey and dull as usual, as if it would rain at any moment. At night the cloud would descend low over the hills. Lightning would flash and thunder rumble, and when it seemed as if rain were invisible, the wind would grow stronger and fiercer, and chase the cloud beyond the hills to reveal a clear, starry sky. A few farming families had started moving to neighboring towns, where the rainfall was more regular. The Mai had called for prayers and fasting in church and mosques. Some religion ministers were agitating for all bread houses and bar rooms in the village to close down, to less the evil they did believe was the cause of the drought. The sky looks overcast today, Zara said. She was standing right behind him. He didn't hear her come out. Should we go back in? He asked. No, she said, sitting beside him. It is cooler outside. Her feet were bared. She had changed into shorts and a t-shirt. Her hair, which had once been long and cascading, was now cut short. But the greatest transformation was in her face, in her eyes. They looked as lovely as ever, huge and round and expressive, but not as open as before. There were something guided about them. The eyes had a set of them that implies determination, but a better, almost desperate determination. She ran her hand through her wet hair, staring up into the dull sky. Where she at him when she asked the question, her voice lowered, gentle. It was an unexpected question, one that he had not considered before, one that he didn't have an answer to. So he said, I met your ex-husband the other day, Captain George. So where when? She did not sound very interested. She was staring in the front of her at the gate. He could believe the sadness emitting from her in waves and torrents. Over a month ago, he is the governor's ADC. We met at the reception after the fundraising Dubai. I recognized him from the picture I saw there. I told him you and I were colleagues. What did he say? He told me you were married to the South African and that the marriage would soon crumble anyway because you couldn't stay with one man long enough. And she turned and stared at him, looking very squarely in his eyes. Go on, why did you stop? Because that's all. She remained silent for a long time, staring at the gate. Then after a while she took a deep breath. I guess I owe you an explanation. Not? No, you don't. She went on. If he hadn't spoke, I married Tama for practical reasons. My visa had expired and the only way I could remain in South Africa was to marry him. I felt it was worthwhile because of the work I was doing there. And we both agreed that it wasn't a real marriage. It was for the job. The children needed me. The home was going through a difficult period. We had started expanding and accepting more orphans, and some of them 8 orphans. And if I left, even for a short while, the work we were doing would suffer. And so I said yes. We got married. Mama waited to hear her mom, but she was quiet. He said, and now, I left because he started wanting more. He wanted it to be a real marriage, but I told him I wasn't ready for that. Wasn't interested in him, not in that way. But he became very sad, distracted from the work. I felt angry for letting myself get into that kind of situation. What I wanted to avoid began to happen. The work began to suffer. And he said he was in love with me and couldn't go on the other way. So I left. I came here straight away. I spent only one night in the capital city to let my mother and sister know that I was back. But why didn't you come to me? I don't know. Not I have to rest. Now I have to rest. She stood up apparently and went inside. Mama stood up and followed her. She was sitting on the sofa by the window, crying. Please go. I really want to be alone now. He turned to go and then he paused and said, We'll come again tomorrow. Zara seems much calmer the next day, though she looked as if she didn't slept much. She said she hadn't been to the dispensary. She had taken the day off in the late afternoon and very hot inside. So they sat outside on the step again, and it was as if they had moved from this position once again. And when she began to speak, she did not without any preamble, as if they hadn't broken off since yesterday. She said, As a kid I was afraid of the dark, of being alone in the dark room, but I outgrew that with time. Then in school I fear not being liked by the other girls, but I have outgrown that with time also. After school it was the fear of failure. I still fear failure, but from a different reason, a more matured reason. I fear it for myself. I do not want to fall below my expectation for myself. That will be so unbearable, worldly that at times I don't even know what my expectations for myself are. Seems to keep mixing up with other people's expectation of me. What does one stop growing up and become really grown up? It was a historical question and Mama did not attempt to answer. He didn't know the answer. She went on. I remember what you once told me. You said the world is anew today as it was when first created. Remember? He nodded. Well, I want to believe that. I really do. They sat watching the shadow moves beneath the tree. They walked about the drought and he told her about Kai and Malai. Let's go visit them now. I have to return the diary I borrowed from them anyway. Okay, for a moment, they pushed to one side and rubbed paint of yesterday and established a hesitant, plumping, emptying cordial. The sisters were in the garden having their afternoon tea. This is Zara, a friend he introduced. After much digging, the sisters discovered that they knew Zara's father. Of course, Lamimi, who knows him well, Malai said, putting her hand over Zara's. This led to the sisters bringing out their early photo album and showing a picture of them and a group of local boys at the mission school. Mama watched in silence as they walked. He watched Zara's eyes became animated. He saw how easily the sisters were up to her. She was the kind of person, he told himself. She had that kind of effect on people. The sisters were seated on either side of her, their fair head framing her dark head. This one is your father, Mailai pointed him out to Zara, who shook her head in amazement, turning to Mamu. I can't believe it. Look at Daddy. He looks so small and crumpy. We have heard of his death. Sorry, child. It was a long time ago, almost 10 years now. The sisters sighed, perhaps contemplating the passage of time. This turned the conversation to their coming departure. The date had finally been set. They didn't seem very happy. Michael insisted. It is the best for our health, he said. but in his hands God has everything. They said they stayed for over 2 hours, watching more pictures of Drinkwater's family. When they got to the mother, Mamo asked suddenly, did she ever want to go back to America? Oh, but she did. She went during the second. No, I mean to take you all back, never to return. The sisters looked at each other and sighed. It was the only point of misunderstanding between It was the only point of understanding between my parents. She wanted to go back, but he believed God has ordained for us to live and die here. Hada said, speaking softly as Mamo and Zara left. The sister made Zara promise to visit again. I will, she promised, hugging each other of them in turn. In the car, Zara sighed and said, he has such sad eyes. Which of them? I mean the mother. She has more sad eyes. I wonder what her story is. Married to a preacher, a fanatic, far away from her friends and homeland, and one of her children did she must have been a broken woman. At the guest house, they drove about in silence, aimlessly passing the house by the roadside. They found themselves in a quiet, almost sad section of the village, with people seated in groups underneath trees, making roads or gossiping, or just waiting for night to fall so they could go in and sleep. Then, as she could bear the silence, Zara pointed at one of the houses and said, see that house? That is my Auntie Saraya's house. She is ill. She has always been ill since I knew her. Her daughter Abigail is a nurse in Brownie. A long time ago, my father used to be in love with a woman called Saraya. Her husband died in a car crash or something. He was a truck driver. Really, my auntie's husband was a driver, and he died a long time ago. I never saw him. Mamo almost laughed out at the coincidence. It must be her. I have seen her only once from a distance. I was only 10 then. What's she like? An angel, maybe. That's why your father loved her so. Maybe, Mama said, surprised that she still felt a twinge of bitterness against the woman. It was a keen reaction carried over from the childhood. Now I will introduce you to a few friends of mine, Mama said, suddenly taking a turn and heading back to the village center. Who are they? Zara asked as they drove off the hills to the girl's house. Some people from the local government office. We met here in the evening to kill time. You don't have to return home immediately, do you? There was no car in front of the house. The guard opened the gate when he saw Mama. The president once stopped here for a quick nap on his way to the next state. It looks like someone loved nest, Zara said, looking at the heavily draped window, the third hinge in the driveway. Once they were inside, she wandered around the living room, peering at the picture on the wall. That was the sole administrator, shaking hands with the state governor. Next to the picture was the man in full regalia, holding his staff of office, his owlish eye looking wise and focused on the camera. And next to that was a picture of the first district officer, Mr. Graves. Lara was pensive as she walked around the room. She finally went and opened the window, pulling aside the drapes. It is hot today. I can turn on the AC if you want, he said, going to the fridge to take out a bottle of orange juice. No, let's leave the window open. Come, see the hills from there. Aren't they lovely? He joined her, standing close behind her, opening the curtain wider with his hand. The sun had started its descent over the hill, slowly assuming a dark reddish color. He turned away from the view and watched the smile on her face. On impulse, he bent forward and kissed her on her neck. The unexpected move startled her and she almost jumped. Then they burst out laughing. Sorry, they both said at once, staring into each other's eyes. He took her in his arms, buried his face against her neck. After a while, she pulled back, holding him at her arms and staring into his eyes. Let's watch a video. Are there any Nigerian films? Yes, they watched the film in silence, leaning against each other, not bothering to turn on the light when the room grew progressively darker. As the film came to an end, a knock sounded on the door, and before he could stand up, the door opened and a female voice said, "It's so dark in here." He recognized the voice immediately, even before the light came on to illuminate Julie at the door, one hand still resting on the light switch, a smile on her face. The smile wilted when she saw his partner. "Hello, Julie," he said brightly, but his mind was thrown into confusion. She advanced slowly into the room, her eyes fixed curiously on Zara. "I saw your car, Julie. This is Zara. Zara, Julie." Julie continued to stand, her hands tapping the back of a chair. She was dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. She had a wig on her head beneath which her real pink making her look even younger and more immature than her age. "Won't you sit down?" he asked. She sat down and turned her eyes on the TV, crossing and uncrossing her legs. Once in a while he saw her still glance at Zara. "The film is finished. Won't you turn off the TV?" Zara asked. Mama turned off the TV and the VCR. Julie announced loudly, suddenly, "I have to go now." He walked her to the door, and as soon as they stepped outside, she broke into tears. "Who is she? Why did you bring her here?" "Julie, go home. I will explain later." And he said wearily, "But I love you." She went on, the tears now streaming down. He looked in her in surprise. The fact that she might be in love with him had never occurred to him. How could he tell her that he didn't love her, that what he had for her was mere adventurous desire that would wither away as soon as he stopped seeing her? "Look, I can't talk now. Meet me in the office tomorrow," he said gently as he could. When she finally left, they stood for a long time staring at the faraway hills before returning inside. Zara was standing in the center of the room, facing the door. He stopped. They remained like that, facing each other. On their faces a million fleeting expressions came and went. Sorrow, pain, doubt, regret, love, and ever fear. Zara spoke first. "What will you tell her when she comes to your office tomorrow?" He shrugged. "I don't know. The truth that I don't love her. Listen, I am sorry about everything, about Tema, about leaving you that first time, about so many things." She stopped, took a deep breath and blurted out, almost in a whisper, "It should never really work, would it, you and I?" He said nothing. "Maybe we love each other too much," she said. Still he said nothing. "You are still angry with me, aren't you?" When he still said nothing, she started towards the door. "I have to go now. This is goodbye then, I guess. I can drop you at the home if you want." She shook her head. "No, I will walk. The air will do me good." Her musky perfume brushes his nostril as she passed. He listened to her footsteps on the veranda, then on the gravel, and then there was silence. A walk in the midnight. He went and sat down. He didn't know how long he remained seated like that, silent, his head bowed, his eyes fixed on the dead TV. But he was roused by the arrival of Lacoutros, the counselor. "Why are you seated alone staring at the dead TV? Are you waiting for someone?" Lacoutros asked, taking off his babanriga and dragging it on the back of the sofa. Mamo looked up and said nothing. I desperately need a drink, the counselor went on. It's been a very busy day today. We went to the fridge and took out a bottle of beer. Dumpling Mahmoud watched him, and it seemed as if his words came from afar. He came and stood over Mahmoud, staring at him curiously. Is something wrong? No, you don't look good. Mahmoud did not answer. He merely stood up and started for the door, staggering in little. His legs felt weak. In his mind, all he could see was Zara's face, and as he passed him at the door, high head, higher and proud. Are you sure you can drive? I will drop you if you want, Actress called after him. I am okay, thanks. He had been driving for almost 30 minutes, taking random turns before he realized he was lost. His eyes had grown dim like a light switch off, and he felt as if he were floating on clouds, a dull, grey and endless ocean of clouds that threatened to engulf the car and drove the splash of light in the trail on the dark road. His eyes kept closing on their own, and minutes later, when he opened his eyes, he was in a ditch. The car had veered off the road, and one of the front wheels was stuck in the open roadside gutter. He opened the door and crawled out, but as soon as he attempted to stand up, he fell, his legs like jelly. He finally pulled himself up by holding to the car. He went and sat down on the culvert, hoping that someone would come along to assist him. But then minutes or hours later, his body acting almost independently of his mind, he found himself walking away from the car. He walked and walked, stumbling into dry grass, clumps by the roadside, often falling down, knocking into trees and rocks. Fear gripped at his heart. He didn't know what was happening to him. This was a manifestation of his illness that he never experienced before. Everything looked hazy. It was as if a huge wall of wool had been erected around him, and he kept bouncing back when he tried to go through it. He had no idea where he was. He looked around to see if anyone was passing, but all he saw were trees looming in the darkness, looking ominous like scavengers awaiting for him to see struggle before sweeping in. He walked faster, now breathing in short, painful gasps. Then far away he saw a light, and he almost cried out with relief. He started towards it, half running, half walking, but the more he walked, the far it receded. He walked on, his breathing getting worse and worse, forcing him to clutch at his chest, to rest against trees, and sometimes to sit down. At last he was close enough to hear voices coming from the direction of the light faint, multiple, raised as if in a song. Once more he started towards the light, waving and stumbling and falling. Finally he stood in front of a huge warehouse-like building, its wide door standing open, a single light bulb burning over the doorway. The voice came from the dim interior, polyglot, jabbering, but one's voice layer rose above the others, orchestrating the cacophony, hollowing out the name Jesus in a sort of demented ecstasy. He walked in and dropped heavily into his first seat he found. He remained like that, bowed as if in prayer, obviously to the noise around him, to the body that brushes against his in their prayerly favored, and some that fell at his feet muttering in many languages at once and foaming at the mouth. It was minutes or hours or seconds later, he couldn't tell, when he slowly returned to his sense. The scream and chant had now descended into low hums and moans and groans. He lifted his face and saw all around him the hailed air, the forehead made bloody by banging against walls, the faces glued to bloody welts by passion nails. His own blood was also covered in dirt and grime and vomit and blood. He couldn't remember throwing up. Tomorrow we will go to the hill. We will play and the Lord will send down the rain, a voice chanted. It was a tall, broad-shouldered man standing behind the altar, waving his Bible at the now silent congregation, his face illuminated by the candles on the lantern. His eyes reflected the light, making his pupils glow like fireflies. But now Mamo, feeling much relieved, slowly got up and made for the door. Outside, he became vaguely aware of where he was. He was in the quarter known as Newtown, where a rash of new radical churches and mosques had sprung up. He was a long away from home. A faintly recalled driving his car into a ditch, and before that, Zara. He glanced at his watch and saw that it was broken. His hand stood at the quarters to midnight. That must have been when the car went into the ditch, or after that, when he fell against the rock by the roadside. It must be much later than that now. He headed in the direction of home, shivering, pulling his flimsy shirt together around his thin frame. His head felt heavy. He felt hot, nauseous. He knew what was happening. There was no doubt about it, though he hadn't had one in a long time. He was going into crisis. He stopped, paralyzed by fear. If he collapsed here, exposed and alone, he would be dead before morning. His body was already weak. He turned and headed back to the church. It was his best hope, but after a few steps, he couldn't walk anymore and sank slowly into the middle of the path, flat on the face. Minutes later, he was able to drag himself to a tree by the side of the road. He pumped his back against the truck, staring up into the clear sky above, and all he could think of was how beautiful the stars looked. There must be millions and millions of them up there, and how ironic it was to be dying on such a night. And whether it was true that good souls rise up to become stars after the body dies. He hoped he might. He hoped he drifting in and out of consciousness. Gradually, he gave up hope. Detachedly, he watched his spirit leave his body to hover over him, unable to bring itself to finally walk away. The riots begin. He woke up in a hospital room. Auntie Marina was settled next to him, her eyes fixed on his face, anxious patient. He was gripped by deja vu. His led had happened before, age ago in another life. The world had been indigo then, and his father had been there in the background, talking to a doctor and his brother. Where was Mamo? Mamo, thank God you are awake, Auntie Maria said, the line to her face relaxing. He thought how old she looked. Recently the line have thickened and multiplied on her face. It is age or sadness. She was speaking to him. Can you hear me, Mamo? I can hear you. There were other beds in the room and other patients and their family. Yes, he had been there to visit his father, and Asaba and his uncle had been there in the waiting room. There was a big shadow beside in his bed, and he could see the huge field outside. Far away there was a fence, and on the other side was the highway that led to the bridge on the way to the state capital. Some men found you on the road. They were coming from an all-night vigil in a church. It was a miracle. Your car was far away in the ditch. And he closed his eyes and thought, that is a miracle. A human body is designed to survive against the stiffness of his cells to repair and regenerate themselves. His body merged effortlessly into the surrounding for protection, and the very atmosphere, the air, is food to his cell. It takes the most extreme kind of violence to kill us, and of course old age. It is not life that miraculous. It is not life that is miraculous. It is death. He said loudly. They are sure you are all right, twin. Marina asked anxiously. I am fine. Are you sure you are all right, twin? Marina asked anxiously. I am fine, really? He opened his eyes and tried a smile at her. He felt sad and exhilarated at the same time. She tried to get him to see it, but he pushed aside the plate and instead accepted a bottle of water and drank and drank. How long have I been? A whole day. One of the nurses came to the house to tell me you were there. Another miracle. What if she hadn't happened to be on duty when you were brought in? It is the Lord's doing. We must be thankful. Later, the doctor came in and asked him how he was feeling. He was an elderly man with thick glasses resting on his nose. He had long upper incisor and let his face a prompting, severe expression. Not bad, Mamo replied truthfully. Good, nothing is really wrong with you. Your auntie told me you have sickle cell anemia. Nothing I can do about that, and you must be more careful of your health, what you eat and drink. Mamo nodded. We will keep you for another 24 hours, just to make sure no complication develop. Auntie Marina left soon after promising to return tomorrow on a taxi to take him home. She did not return because the next day the riots began. In a bid for divine intervention, the Kent Christian community, regardless of sect, had decided to go on to the top of the hill early in the morning to pray for rain and to persevere till their prayers were answered. Auntie Marina never wants to miss a chance to pray. Went long. The group sang as it went, growing in number. On the way, the singers stood at the house of all the known Christians to persuade them to come to the hill with them. The truth began when their path took them past the village mosque, which was in the section of Kent known as Hausa quarters, because most of the people lived there were originally from the Hausa cities. Though the Muslims had lived in Kent for many years, intermarrying with the villagers, they never really assimilate. They still keep their religion and their Hausa tradition. The singing drew the Muslims out of their mosques and bed, and when they discovered that the Christians were going to the top of the mountain to pray for rain, they decided not outdone. They went back into their houses and mosques and brought out their prayer mats and beat and chanted, Allahu Akbar. They also made for the hills. For many hours later, the trees and rocks rang with the shrill sounds of Christian and Muslim praying, and so great was their rivalry that neither group was willing to quit before the other. The morning changed into afternoon, and the afternoon to evening, but still they prayed without eating or drinking. Some fainted. All grew horses. The skies darkened. Thunder rambled, letting flashes, but no rain fell. Then, in frustration, the two groups began to jib at each other, and the Christian said to the Muslim, Pray harder, perhaps your God has grown hard of hearing. And the Muslim responded, No, you pray harder, perhaps your God has gone to the market, and you must shout hard for him to hear you. But who cast the first stone? One of the jaguars first seized stone too plentiful and on the top of the hill. No one knew, but soon they were whizzed through the air and connecting with faces, arms, legs, and chest. The fighting descended into the village, into the streets, into the houses before the riot police came. Churches and mosques on fire. There are dead bodies on the street. I saw many with my own eyes. A wild-eyed arm-waving man said to a group of listeners standing next to Mamo, who had been discharged hours ago. He had sat patiently in the waiting room, waiting for his auntie, wondering what had kept her. But now, news of the fight with some of the casualties had started arranging in the hospital. People stood in groups at the hospital gate to hear the news from the increasing number of people fleeing the fight. The hospital was one of the obvious safe places. He saw women coming in through the gate, their possession rolled up in bundles in their head. Others had children wrapped on their back, and as they ran, they kept looking back over their shoulder. The injured were brought by pick-ups and offloaded unceremoniously in front of the casualty ward. Mama stood in the crowd by the gate, feeling blood bumps into him, and eyes unseeingly staring into this. Fear was palpable in the hot air, and a sort of low, careless humming came from the women who surged forward whenever new refugees arrived, looking into the faces, checking for news of loved ones. They weren't ever aware they were giving up the continual human noise. Mama felt weak and numb. The news was so sudden, so unexpected. So somehow he knew his aunties would be in the congregation on the hill. He went and sat on the bench by the entrance of the casualty ward. Waiting not far from him, a child of about 3 stood alone, lost, crying. The light was dying soon. It would be night. More people trooped in through the gate, and now the whole place for the ward was filled with grooming tired bodies, sitting and lying in a dusty earth. A few nurses in white growing about with bandage and cans of water. They could now hear far away gunshots. The police kept the peace. Near him, a man, perhaps the same age, wild man who had never brought the news of the fight, was walking about how the police had gone from house to house, beating whoever they found indiscriminately, untying the goats and chicken, and throwing them into the back of their truck, and all the time shooting into the air, keeping the peace. Mama went the night on the bench, angry, his arm wrapped around him to keep warm, listening to the babies crying and their mothers mourning continuously. In the morning, he made his way into the emergency ward, looking at the bloody faces. Some he recognized, but none was his auntie. Next, he went outside to the center of the crowd. Men and women sprawled out on the dusty ground, but still there was no sign of his auntie. A group of young men were making their way out of the hospital gate. Security guards stopped them and began to argue with them, trying to dissuade them from going out. The police are still out there shooting, but they went away. Mama went with them. They were about 5 in number, and many times they were stopped by gun-shooting policemen and told to lie flat on the ground while they were searched for weapons. But at last he got home. He found the little girl, Rifkatu, sitting on the step alone, tears running down her face. "Where is auntie?" he asked. She went out to the hill yesterday and haven't returned back. He went to his uncle's house, and that was where he found out that Auntie Marina was among a group of people arrested by the police. Mama felt his body slowly relaxing, unintensing. She was alive. "But she is all right," Did you see her? He asked his uncle greatly, fearfully. No one knows anything about setting. There is so much confusion. I am going to the police station later to see what was going on. I will come back with you, Mama said. I will come with you, Mama said immediately. When they got to the station, they were surprised by the size of crowds waiting to hear words of their families. Suddenly, there were no Christians and Muslims, just anxious people eager to see their loved ones. They stood before the station, facing two police stands on the step with relief points at the crowd. After a while, a pot-bellied inspector came out of the station to make an announcement. The crowd went quiet. I am going to read out the names of the people we have here. Here are the 40 of them. If you hear your relation's name, then you might bring food, but you cannot see him or her. They will be held here for their role in the riot. They will be released after they had been interrogated. Do you understand? The crowd murmured in answer. The inspector proceeded to read out the names, and one of them was Marina. Momo turned to his uncle. What do we do now? We do what he said. We will go home, we will get her some food, we will wait. I am sure it will be all right in the end. That's the unmaxing. That evening, the Waziri came to see Mamo. We weren't affected by the fight. Were you? He asked, coming up to the veranda where Mamo was seated on a chair. Mamo stood and offered him the chair. He went inside and brought out another for himself. This is big surprise, sir. Yes, I am sure it is. You didn't expect to see me here, did you? Ha ha ha, but it's okay. I am going about to make sure that everything is okay, to talk to the people and show them the folly of violence. All the mosquitoes and churches and most of the shops and barrooms are still on fire. This is fully shared fully, and the dead, they are still discovering bodies. Over 10 bodies so far. You weren't affected, were you? Not personally, but my auntie is in detention. What? But why didn't you come to me immediately? Did you know what brute the police are, how brute the police are, and their sinking cell? Ah, the Waziri put his hand over his nose. It is not a place for an old woman. It wasn't around. I was in the hospital. Just got back today. Oh, were you ill? My car ran into a ditch, Mama said without elaborating. Yes, I saw it outside. Dentist. It wasn't very serious, was it? It was going to affect your writing, is it? Or have you finished the book already? No, I haven't finished the book. The Waziri waited for elaboration, but Mamo kept silent, turning his eye away. Then he turned back and blurted, Waziri, I want to talk about the world. What? Not that again. The Waziri stood up and began to pace the tiny space of the veranda. His face was thoughtful, expressive of his pleasure. I went to the site the other day and there was no work going on at all. Why don't we get other engineers? Surely money is not a problem now. The Waziri sighed and sat down. He pulled his chair close to Mamo. His face betrayed impatient and long-suffering expression, and when he spoke it, how like esteem planning E is equals to MC squared to a child. You really don't understand how these things work, do you? I told you to work by the committee, and you did. Think the community works for nothing? I will be open with you. They have to be given something, their shares of the 15 million, and these are the mice we are talking about here. So you don't give them small money, and so at the end of the day, what remains for the wealth is not as much as you would expect. Do you understand? I am being blunt here. You mean the money, the 15 million that was raised for drilling wells so that the people could get water, was shared among the mines and nothing is left for the original project? Mamo asked. Now it was his turn to speak slowly, patiently. The Waziri smiled sleepily, then returned. Not all the money. Did you think we forgot about you, our talent scribe? Ha ha ha. No, you will give me your account number and I will put in something for you. How much, Mamo asked. Let me say 100,000 naira, you deserve it. But the book must be finished soon. It is very important. But what of the people don't know, don't, but what of the people? Don't they get anything at all? Come on, secretary. I do know the people. I represent the people. It is my work to know the people. Do you think they don't know how these things are done? They do. And you know that I am sure that this is what you didn't realize before. This money shared by the mice, it will eventually find its way back to the people. These same people will come to the palace with their list of problems, medicine for their children, school fees, hunger, and do you think we turn them away empty-handed? Never. So in the end, the people benefit more than anyone else. As as he listened to the sweet Mephistopheline voice, Mama noticed that despite the Waziri's quaint, he had a predator's keen gaze, and he seems to be always waiting patiently trying to outguess his interlocutors and the bread. Why hadn't he noticed the foul prediction bread before now? Or was it just that he had preferred to be noticed? Why had he not walked away from the council chamber that day when he had looked out the window and had realized that there was nothing of dignity to be written about the man, and later had been other opportunities, but he had not taken them? Surely he thought Lamamo could have walked away. Does that make me a weaker person than my brother, both physically and mentally? But said the Waziri in conclusion, let's not waste time talking about the obvious. What is more important at the moment is the book. You must finish it soon. Then we will start printing it. How many copies will be sufficient? I want every household in Kent to own a copy. Think to own your name will be in every household, on every table. Tell me, sir, why the book is so important to you. No, not to me, to the anniversary, to all the Kent. Perhaps I am not the right person to write the book. Why do you say that? There are so many things I don't understand. For instance, why did you hire me to write the Miles biography and try to make it seem like it was the my idea to hire me? Young man, the Mai himself ordered. No, Waziri, he didn't, but we could ask him at the place if you insist. The Waziri was silent for a moment, and then he said, does it really matter? At first, Mama went on. I was puzzled when I met him for interview, and he appeared to be surprised to see me. But then later I said to myself, what if he didn't hire me at all? What if the Waziri hired me and led me to believe that the Mai did? At first, it didn't make sense because why would you do that? I even tried to explain it by believing that your only ambition was to get a good mention in the book. But soon other things happened to open my eyes to what was really going on. I came across the young man, Prince. You remember the day you promised to bring him to me for interview? Well, I suspect rightly that you wouldn't. So I went to him only to discover that he had been bundled out of town by place's servants sent by you, so that I couldn't get to interview Prince. But why? Why? He didn't have an answer, but then I knew that you were desperately hiding something. something you didn't want me in particular to know. And what might that be? I am coming to that. I found out so that Prince had been bragging to his neighbors that the palace invited him to come to Kent from Ile-Ife. You had played the same trick on him as you had done on me. You invited him but made him believe that it was the Mai that invited him. But again I asked myself, why would you do that? Could it be that you wanted him to become the Mai after this one? But surely you knew that no one would take a deadlock with smoking Buska serious. Ha ha ha, the Waziri said. You do have a great imagination. Go on, I am enjoying this. Indulge me. Mama said dryly and went on. Your plan is so clever because on the other surface each phase of it appears to be separate. For instance, no one can see the connection between Prince and yourself, or between you and my book. They all appear to be separated, unless of course one is in a position to see a pattern, and that person is me. I am in a good position to see the shape formed by this desperate piece and bring us to the book. You want me to write a book that will apparently celebrate the greatness of the Bulldog line, culminating the present mind. But the more I research, the more I discover there is nothing to celebrate. All my books can do is the opposite, which is to heap ridicule on the Bulldog line by showing how it was the beneficiary of the violence on our culture by the colonialists and therefore not a true representative of our people. All the evidence will be in my book. This will only make the people want to get rid of the Bulldog line and perhaps desire a return to the early Lakai line, especially if there was a great unrest in the land. Perhaps, due to the broken promises over wealth, the people are desperate and hungry and in no mood for a long contest over the throne. Once confession began over who really deserves the throne, you will be there to advise the kingmakers to begin to seriously consider a return to the Lakai line, which will, of course, be the will of the people. And who will their choice be? Prince? You just said he can't be taken serious. But that is the beauty of your plan, isn't it? You are actually his great uncle, so you are eligible as he is to be the Lakai successor, and that will make you perfect compromise candidate for mine, because not only are you related to Lakai, you are also related to my Al-Hassan. I will forgive you because I am sure you didn't know what a Waziri cannot succeed his mind. Anything is powerful where there is a will and means. The kingmaker under guidance wouldn't find it difficult to waive the rules that says a Waziri couldn't neither succeed the mind. You will make sure they did. They will make their lives easier and generous money gifts. Perhaps the very money rise at the Dubar after all. Who is there to challenge you? Well, secretary, at least I was right about you. You do not have a lively imagination. Mahmoud stared directly into the Waziri's good eye, and despite the Waziri's slight blattering tone, he could see in the eyes that he wasn't amused. What? The Waziri said slowly. If I offer you more money, Mahmoud laughed. You seem to forget that my father left me a lot of money, more money than I needed. But thanks for the offer. I just want you to dig the walls like we planned. The Waziri was silent for a long time. He stood up as if to go. Then on the last step, he turned rather tragically and said, what if I told you that all these things you have said are a figment of your imagination? that I am loyal subject of the mind, and my only ambition is to see his memory preserved in your book. Would you believe this? Memo shook his head. You shouldn't have deceived the people over the well. The waziri shrugged. You leave me with no choice. Then I heard that all the arrest riot will be taken to the state capital for questioning. How long will an old woman last in that kind of situation? How old is your auntie? 60, 65. But if you want, I get her out in a minute. Her life is in your hands. Think about it. Fire on the hills. Lamamo came at night when the hills were on fire. The police had set the hills aflame to flush out rioters who were still hiding there from capture and brutalization by the police. Mama was seated on the veranda, watching the hills burn. The waziri had left hours, but Mamo had been able to move from where he sat. The girl Rifkatu had asked him if he wanted something to eat, but he had waved her away impatiently without even looking at her. He knew he should go to his uncle and discuss what had transpired between him and the waziri. His uncle had warned him not to tackle the waziri over his suspicion, but he had done it. He had had to do it to regain his dignity, but it seemed he had now ensnared himself with his own mouth, and the only way out was to agree to write the book. He couldn't bring his limbs or his brain to function. He felt physically tired. His body had yet recovered from his recent ordeal, and he realized he hadn't eaten anything since yesterday. His head ached and his eyes were blurry from hunger, and so when the gate opened, a man with a bag slung over his shoulder came in. Mamo thought it was his eyes imagining things. He waited for the figure to become recognizable, and when he saw the eyes patch, his mind told him it should mean something. That was when he recognized his brother. But when he opened his mouth to speak, no words came out. He was overcome by emotion and confused and saddened by the eyes patch that he felt tears came to his eyes. His mother was standing at the foot of the step looking up at him, a bit hasty uncertainty, as if wanting for Mamo to make the first move. At last Mamo stood up and said hoarsely, "La Mamo, Mamo," said La Mamo. For a moment I feared I had never entered the wrong house. He came up the stairs slowly, and the brother embraced him formally, and they both sat down. Both looked on the floor and then at the faraway hills, and then the compound wall, but not at each other, as if they had found looking at each other too painful. Mamo was conscious that he walked thin and tired and haggard, and La Mamo's eyes patch looked so strained to his face that Mamo felt like leaning forward and putting it aside to see if underneath the eyes was really good. I was building bond together and the people hiding. I passed by the church and it was still looking, the Mamo said heavily. Mamo nodded. There was a lot of people have been arrested by the police. Auntie Marina is with them. And father, Mamo looked sharply at his brother. La Mamo saw in his eyes, but they waited to hear it. Father Mamo was slowly clearing his throat. He died almost a year ago. La Mamo was silent for a long time, and then he said, I felt as if I have lost my way coming from the bus stop. This wasn't what I dreamed of becoming back to. I told Binto about the green hills and farm and valley. He stopped talking and gave a little laugh, looking down at his hand. A thin beard covered his chin, and in the weak light he looked rugged, burly, The eyes patch are added to the rugged look. Bintu, tell me about her, Mama said, and without a word his brother reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. He brought out a picture and slid it across the table. It shows a young and pretty face, determined, optimistic. How old is she? Mama asked. He really didn't know what else he might ask. She will be 25 in July. She is 3 months pregnant. Mamo turned the picture around and around in his hand. The card has lost some of its glossy and stiffness, like pictures do when they are still for long in wallets or even handled too often. He imagined his brother praying out the picture and showing it to the people, friends or casual acquaintances on the bus, in a barroom. He had said, careful not to appear too proud. She hopes it will be a girl. Me, I don't matter, a boy or a girl, but it matters. It might be twins. I am a twin already. Is she coming to join us you soon? Amabo struggled. I don't know. After she became pregnant, I started thinking about him and thinking like that, and she encouraged me to come and see how things are, hoping that one day we might. But now the struggle. She has her degree now. You know, she added proudly. His voice had a certain twang to it, which Mammon guessed would be a Liberian twang. And you mentioned going back to school yourself in your lecture. Did you? Mamo asked. I did. I got a diploma. It wasn't easy, but I did it. Suddenly, as if talking about his wife had restored his appetite, the Mamo said, I am hungry. I haven't eaten anything since I left Lagos this morning. Mamo stood. I doubt if there is anything prepared. I could wake up Rifkatu to prepare something for you. Who is she? You are not married, are you? Mamo smiled and shook his head. No, just a cousin staying with us. Mamo descended the chair and headed past the kitchen towards the chicken scoop. Does Auntie Marina still keep chicken? He called back to Mamo. Yes. Good. Why don't we have some roasted chicken? Start the fire. I will be right there. Mamo shook his head and make the kitchen. Suddenly, it seems as if the worries that laid weight on his shoulder, squashing his entire horizon only hours ago, were now lifted. His appetite came rushing back. He went into the kitchen and felt around for the matchbox. The electric bulbs in the kitchen had died months ago, and Auntie Marina had bothered to change it. He struck the match, and with its light he formed the kerosene and poured it onto the wood in the rectangular hat. He threw the dying match onto the wood, and the flame oozed into life. Soon Lama walked on with the chicken. He had slit its neck and with a pocket knife. His legs were still kicking. His eyes were covered with blood. The blood looked black on the poor light in the kitchen. And suddenly Mamo recalled his brother's letter about how he had killed the major who had tried to rape Bintu, who tried to imagine what was in the room could have been like, and how the blood would have flowed on the carpet, and the terrible sound the gun must have made when the shot was fired. They sat on a low stool before the heat, waiting for kerosene to burn off and for firewood to begin to burn properly. The Mamo's hand quickly, effortlessly plucked the chicken feathers, revealing the plump skin underneath. "How did father die?" he asked. He pushed his knife into the center of the chicken ribs case and cut it open from the chest to anus. Then he began to pull out the entrail. The blood dripped onto the pile of feathers on the mud floor.